Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Uh, I'm Kiroatun from English Literature. I want to explain about morphology lessons. And thank you, my lecturer, Miss Ellie Ulfa. Forgive me if I was late send my task. This here I want to explain about the historical sources of English word formation. This chapter does not attempt to summarize the whole history of the English language. Instead, I will concentrate on just those aspects of its history over the past 1,000 years or so that help to account for some of the peculiarities of word formation in contemporary English. In inflectional morphology, what is striking is the in transformation of English from a language with elaborate inflectional morphology. Germanic, Romance, and Greek vocabulary. English is West Germanic language, relates closely to the other West Germanic languages like Dutch, German, Frisian, and Afrikaans, and less closely to the North Germanic languages like Norwegian, Danish, Swedish, Icelandic, and Faroese. And French is one of the so-called Romance languages, descended from Latin, along with Portuguese, Spanish, Catalan, Provençal, and Romance, and spoken in Switzerland, Italian, with its many diverse dialects, and Romanian. The Romans revered Greek culture, and most of classical Latin literature emulates Greek models. However, the Latin of classical pre-Christian literature did not use many Greek words, the Roman preferring instead to create new Latin terms to translate Greek ones. And here are some examples involving Latin, Greek, and Hebrew, which resemble English in distinguishing singular and plural forms in nouns. In short, language from Greek, in singular, like phenomenon, in plural, phenomena. In Greek, schema, in plural, schemata. In Latin, like singular, example cactus, in plural, cacti. For example, formula, in plural, formulae. In singular, like datum, in plural, data. In Hebrew language, in singular, for example, cherub, and plural, cherubim. Like example, kibbutz, in plural, kibbutzim. These foreign plurals are all vulnerable. However, phenomena and data seem solidly stabilized, but for the others, it is probably more usual now to hear orid schemas, cactuses, formulas, cherubs, and kibbutzes. And number 4, the reduction in inflectional morphology. This chapter does not attempt to summarize the whole history of the English language. Instead, I will concentrate on just those aspects its history over the past 1,000 years, or so that help to account for some of the peculiarities of word formation in contemporary English. These two numbers and four cases yielded a pattern of eight grammatical words for each non-lexeme, as illustrated at 2 and 3. Nominative in singular name in plural naman. Accusative naman in plural naman. Genitive in singular in plural namena. Dative in singular naman in plural namun. Like singular, singular, in plural, plural. Nominative in singular stand stone, in plural stanas. Accusative in singular stand, in plural stanas. Genitive in singular stands, stanas, in plural stana. In number 5, characteristics of Germanic and non-Germanic derivation. At 5 are listed most of the derivational affixes that we have considered so far, classified according to their origin. In Germanic, word is Roman, is Ion, and in Greek, ete. Germanic, ed, in Romance, an, en, in Greek, ene. In Germanic, en or en, Roman, y or fy. In Greek, is the Germanic, in or r, Romance, all, all, in Greek, ism or esm. In Germanic, hood, in Romance, ends, in Greek, is. Germanic, ea, as in dogi, in Romance, r, or Greek, main. In Germanic, late, Romance, in Greek, de. In Germanic, shape, Romance, is, or Greek, it is. For example, like booklet and cigarette. And number 6, questions in morphology. It makes sense to ask whether a certain word formation process or particular affix, let's say, is in or out of fashion, and self-appointed language pundits comment on such changes in linguistic fashion regularly in the media. However, nobody comments on fashion in how occasions are formed or in the structure or relative clauses. For instance, the result is that the Latin and Greek derivative element in the vocabulary of English has, since the 18th century, been pruned rather than increased. Headlit or eccentric compound nouns such as deadbeat, lazy bones, and pickpocket do not reflect productive patterns in modern English. The conclusion, history and structure. Characteristics of language that are due purely to historical accident are the characteristic that, in principle, are least likely to interest a general linguist, The Norman conquest in uh, 1066 1066 1066 is just such an incident. So its consequences for the vocabulary of English, the massive medieval intake of words from French, may seem to deserve a place only in histories of a place only in histories of the English language, not in books such as this about its morphological structure. But there is more to it that, if it had not been for the Norman conquest and its aftermath, English morphology would not have occurred. The conquest and its aftermath. English morphology would not have occurred that the earth first site the other first site rather bewildering mix of characteristics evident from chapter 3 and 5. What's more, one cannot dismiss characteristic acquired through the Latin lexical intake as unproductive and therefore not truly part of modern English morphology. For as we saw in chapter 8, some Latin derivative process such as suffixion of like ion and ins are in limit domain just as formally regular as progress such as adverb. Recommendation for reading on the history of English general and on econ tram is particular. See Bow and Cable in 1968, Bayer 1983 has good coverage of what one might call the natural history of word information, with case studies of particular suffixes such as Nick, which enjoyed a considerable vogue in the middle of the 20th century, but has since faded. One more recent development, C. Bayer in 1994, the contemporary morphological consequence of the fact the English vocabulary has two main sources, like Germanic and Romance, have been explored extensively within the framework of lexical chronology by Kiparsky in 1982 and others. For an introduction to this approach, look at Katamba in 1993 and that process to Casey and Shaw in 1985. For recent this question, see Gigerich in 1999. Thank you very much, and I think that's all enough. Thank you for attention. My lecturer, Miss Eli Ulfia Ulfa. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.